Bradenton, the first race of the year and the first shakedown with the new turbo and GrubbWorm 3.0, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we went down and ran U.S. Street Nationals, jumped in X275. Car is legal for that, it's a legal turbo, so it's a good opportunity to test on some good prep and good weather.
But even before that, what's the new turbo and what did you do on the dyno before you left?
It's a Precision Pro Mod 88 XPR single turbo. We went up from the 8891 that we've been running last season. Dynoed around 1600 wheel, which is where we stopped. I mean, it has a little more left. That was basically 40 pounds of boost, you know, tapering down to around 36 at the top of the pull. So should have a lot left.
And so this turbo is the Pro Mod version of the first one. Is it any bigger or?
Yeah, the compressor exducer is larger. I'm not sure exactly how much. And then the turbine is a lot larger, being the Generation 2 Pro Mod XPR line. I want to say it's maybe a 113 turbine,
Okay.
113, 103.
And how much power was the car making? Remind me, how much power was the car making before this setup?
Well, the most it made on the dyno was a little over 1,300. We turned it up at the track later, you know, a little bit, little by little. So we're guessing probably 14 to 1450. So the current setup should be at least 100 horsepower more than the old setup, probably more like 150. And then we've probably got another 100, 150 to go, we think, before this turbo becomes tapped out.
Right on. So you got plenty of room to grow.
Yeah.
So walk me through. This is the first shakedown pass. So you didn't come away with a win or anything, but we came home with a lot of new knowledge, and the car ran decent, right? The first pass you made, the 8th mile time, but it's pretty much identical to what you were doing when you were setting the records.
Yeah, the first pass we made, it ran a 494. The clutch is new also, and that was really a bigger deal with, you know, trying to get the car sorted out for this year than the turbo, really, in my opinion. I mean, it's a different clutch than we've been racing. Same brand from Advanced Clutches, but it's a little different design, a little different model, I guess you would say.
What is it exactly? Do you know the model off the top of your head?
It's an 8-inch twin. What we had been running last year was an 8.5-inch twin technically, but it was an older clutch that we had bought secondhand. So it wasn't like his current design or preferred offering. And basically the short story with that is it used a different disc that was turned down to the 8.5-inch diameter. So even though we went down to an 8 from an 8.5, we have more surface area on the disc because it was a disc designed to be an 8-inch disc instead of just modifying a larger disc. So
Okay.
should hold more power according to him and just have, you know, better characteristics as far as the tunability goes. And 2 passes, you know, we basically set it up similar to last year's clutch, and, you know, based on the recommendation of Rob Advanced. And it made a good pass the first pass, but it was a little tight and bogged the car down quite a bit. So we made another adjustment just to base pressure, and it matched its best 60-foot ever. 330 was the same as at World Cup, which is the best it ever had on the 730 pass. And it ran a 480, and it would have ran a little faster, but we were having some issues with crank sensor or crank pickup. We're not sure if it's a sensor or electrical interference or what it may be yet, but anyway, we were having that issue above 8,200 RPM basically, which we'd like to turn this thing to 86, 87, maybe 8,800. But because of that, we backed our shift points down, backed the rev limiter and everything down to about 82 just to make a pass. And the mile an hour was low on that pass, and it was a little slower than it probably should have been because we ran out of third gear and it hit the limiter. You know, of course, we would have had to shift to fourth to finish the pass. So kind of made a 480 pass coasting through the finish line, I guess, you know, like right during the fourth gear shift. So.
And so which you were experiencing the crank trigger issues in that. Which pass was that when you made the big wheelie? Was that the first time you experienced that issue?
No, we had an issue at the track on a previous pass. We actually paid to test on Wednesday, I guess it was, and made 2 hits. First pass it spun because the clutch was really tight. Then we adjusted the clutch and made the 494 pass. Then we adjusted the clutch further and made the 480 pass. And then the wheelie pass was actually our second round of qualifying. It would have been our 4th pass, and we had turned, got more aggressive with our boost ramp, and power was coming in, a lot harder, and it shut off, and set at the top of second gear basically. So the issue with the crank sensor seems to be, it goes hand in hand with how much power the car's making, how hard it's accelerating. If we take power out of it, it doesn't have an issue. But as we add power back, the issue comes back. So we made a 480 pass, kind of soft, and short shifted it to get a clean qualifying effort. And then we were going to try different things with the crank sensor. But we decided to come back home because we had a slave cylinder issue also. So the hydraulic slave is just a GM factory LS style slave cylinder. Something happened to it on that wheelie pass, and the fluid's leaking out. We lost our clutch, and at that point, it really wasn't worth changing, the slave and chasing the crank signal issues, because, like I said, we were really just there to test and dial our clutch in, and the clutch came in really quick, and we were happy with that. So we decided to come back home a day early.
Right on. And so we've been through some of the specs. But let's just do a quick rundown. So you were using a Dominator, and then is the LT using like a 24X?
Yeah, it's a Holley Dominator ECU, and the 24X is just the hardware for the crank signal and cam signal. So basically, it uses an EFI connection 24X billet timing cover, and their timing chain set, which basically mimics the 1X signal that a LS, like an LS2 timing chain sprocket would have, and it houses an LS2 or LS3 style cam sensor in that billet cover. So it's really neat. And then the crank trigger wheel is a 24X, and it mounts in the factory location of the 4X trigger that these cars had, the OBD2 cars anyway. So it's pretty much just a real clean, neat install. Everything is inside the engine. There's no external crank trigger or sensor or anything of that nature, and that's good because it's neat, but it's bad because we can't check our sensor clearances easily and things of that nature. So we may end up going to like an external crank trigger, but for now we're going to see if we can pinpoint it as some kind of interference issue. Hopefully that's all it is, and we keep running everything as it is right now.
And so in this video, I'll link to the spec sheet on the GrubbWorm, because we're getting a lot of questions from you guys on the Dominator, on what ECU you're running, if you're still running the OptiSpark. Of course, that's a common question, which, and then it's still a factory LT4 intake?
Yeah, it's an LT4 factory intake that's been ported now. Last year we ran a completely stock intake all season that somebody that wasn't a professional had just tried to gasket match a little bit, but the runner itself really wasn't ported at all. This year we found a good deal on a used intake that Lloyd Elliott had ported, so that may be of benefit to us as well. And of course this weekend was the first time we'd ran that, and that could have contributed to the better dyno numbers that we're seeing also. But like I said, turbo's still got a good little bit left, we think.
Cool. And then it's a stock block that's been filled with cement, and it's a completely forged rotating assembly that's been destroked, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's filled with a block filler called Hard Block. Crower crank. It's a custom crank because of the shorter stroke. But Crower crank, Oliver, Speedway Series connecting rods, and diamond pistons.
What is the stroke?
It's 3 1/4.
And then what's the resulting cubic inch?
It would be a 327 if it were standard bore, but it's been bored 10 over, so that bumps it to a 329.
Cool. And then it's running through the TIG Performance race transmission that's with 5th and 6th Elite. That's been faceplated, correct?
That's right. It's our ultimate drag transmission. That's the 4-speed deal with G-force gears.
Right on. And is it still a factory T56 case?
It is. We're working on some billet parts, billet front plate, and some other things that I'm sure you're going to be showing guys here shortly, but for now, still all stock case.
Right on. Okay, cool. Well, thanks. And what's the next couple races?
We'll probably just try to hit a local testing tune or two and see if we can sort these issues out. I know it's winter time, but as long as we get some good weather, a couple of local tracks open up Sunday afternoons. But the first race is going to be Texas 2K, most likely, which is in the middle of March.
Right on. So we got time to chase those gremlins.
Yeah, hopefully we can get them ironed out.
Right on. Thanks.
John Cruz and John Atkins coming up right now. Atkins, of course, the Trip Performance car, the 6-speed manually shifted machine. John Cruz from Tampa, Florida, the 1987 turbocharged Buick Grand National that does retain V6 power.
Pop, you don't stop, baby. The three-shift car going to be left-hand side. Oh, yeah, one foul. I was excited.
It was all looking pretty good there. Between hucking fire out of it when it was leaving the starting line to him grabbing gears with a nose in the air, but he had a lift early. I'm talking about John Atkins.